I love to have homemade desserts in our home. It is definitely something that I prefer to having like store-bought, pre-packaged anything. I like to know exactly what it is that we are actually eating, and if I am making it from scratch myself, then I know what that is. The problem though that I have found is that we can get pretty busy sometimes, and it is really easy to just grab a box of brownies from the store if we don't have any kind of a like sweet thing that we can munch on. And I have found that making sure that we have some sweet treats in our freezer all the time can really help us avoid that. So that is what I'm going to work on today. I am going to work on some freezer desserts, and I thought I would bring you guys along with me for that. This is a pretty basic cheesecake recipe. I'm going to start with the graham cracker crust. So I have 7 ounces of graham crackers I just pulverized in my blender. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 6 tablespoons of browned butter. Now, if you take the time just to have that extra step to brown that butter, it adds a whole delicious level of flavor to it. And then I'm going to pour that into my 10-inch greased springform pan, and I'm using the back of a measuring cup just to kind of smush it down. And then that's going to go in a 350-degree oven for 8 minutes until it is just nice and browned. And while that is cooking and cooling, I'm going to take 4 blocks of cream cheese, 32 ounces altogether, and put that in the bowl of my stand mixer. I like to go ahead and give this a head start on blending up just to kind of get it fluffy. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of granulated sugar to that. Just a pinch of kosher salt. Anytime I'm baking, I always like to add a little bit of salt. It doesn't make it salty, it just makes it delicious. And then I'm going to blend that up. Always make sure that you scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl, especially when you're making something like this, because you want to make sure it all gets mixed in there really well together. And then to that, I'm going to add 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. So this cheesecake is going to be super creamy. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 cups of sour cream. That's going to help this cheesecake be really creamy, but it's also going to add to that tanginess that you want a cheesecake to have. And then I'm adding about a teaspoon of vanilla extract and 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. That's just going to help bind everything together. You definitely want that in there. And then the last thing that I'm going to add is 4 eggs, just 1 at a time. If you're like me and like to live on the edge, I don't crack mine into a bowl. At least I didn't today. But if you want to make sure that you don't get any shell in there or anything like that, then you can always crack your eggs into a bowl separately and then just add them 1 at a time. Once I have my filling all done, then I like to cover the outside of my springform pan with foil. So here I did 2 different layers of foil, which proved to be a great move because the first layer the water got into. So I always like to do 2 just in case. And then pour my cheesecake filling right into that. And this this is gonna cook at 350 for about an hour in a water bath. So I just have mine sitting in some water. After it has cooked at 350 for an hour, you're gonna turn your oven off and leave it sitting in your oven for another hour and then let it cool completely. My cheesecake has cooled completely, so I am going to go ahead and start packaging it up for my freezer. So this, I guess, works really well if you are a family. Well, like, we wouldn't eat this whole cheesecake in one sitting anyway. And so there have been times that I have used this just for leftovers. So I could make this for like a party or just dessert for our family. And then anything that we have left over, I can go ahead and package up like this and stick in my freezer. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is just kind of run my knife around the edge. And I'm just gonna pop it up and so pretty. Okay, this looks delicious. So I'm just gonna slice this up, and then each individual slice I am going to package in some plastic wrap, and then I will stick those in the freezer. So I have my cheesecake all pre-sliced and packaged up. So all of this is going to go into the freezer exactly like this. And then once they are completely frozen through, which is only going to take a few hours, then I will take them out and put them in a Ziploc bag. And that's just going to kind of help them stay good for longer. So this is going to stay good in my refrigerator for up to, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks. They never last that long in our house, but if you really wanted to make cheesecake ahead of time, you have plenty of leeway when it comes to that. So you can also freeze the cheesecake whole if you would rather freeze it whole. That's absolutely possible too. You're just going to wrap it all in one, freeze it, and then when you pull it out, whether it's whole or just the individual pieces, just pull it out 20 to 30 minutes ahead of time, and it is going to still be cold but not frozen through, and that is ideal. You can also pull it out maybe like the night before and stick it in the refrigerator if you would rather do that. So cheesecake gives you a lot of functionality, a lot of options if you want to make a make-ahead dessert, but we just like it to have in individual servings, just to have a nice little treat at the end of the day sometimes. So the second make-ahead dessert that I am going to be working on today are some cookies. So oftentimes I will make a batch of cookies and they will get munched on the first day when they are the best tasting, the best texture. And then after that, they really don't get eaten, and we always end up tossing them out. And so I have found that if I make my cookie dough ahead of time and go ahead and portion it out, then I can just bake however many cookies I want at a time, and it saves me a lot of mess later on. So on days when I just want to have like a nice little sweet treat after like lunch or something for the kids, then I can pull it out, make 1 or 2 cookies for each kid, and we don't have any waste. And then they stay good in the freezer for a really long time. So I'm going to work on that right now. The cookies that I'm making today are chocolate chip cookies. So I'm starting with a cup or 2 sticks of softened room temperature butter. And I'm going to use my paddle attachment for this. I like to go ahead and kind of get that fluffed up a little bit. And then to that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of packed brown sugar. And then 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar. And then you just want to get that all creamed together. And then I add about a teaspoon of kosher salt to that, and then get started on my dry ingredients. So I'm gonna start with 2 cups of just all-purpose flour. And then this is an optional ingredient, but I like to add about 2 teaspoons of oat fiber to this. It's just gonna add some fiber to those cookies, and I just feel a little bit better about my kids having cookies. And then a teaspoon of baking soda. And then the last dry ingredient that these will have is 1/4 cup of cocoa. This is not cocoa mix, but this is just baking cocoa. So once that sugar and salt and the butter have all creamed together, I like to scrape down the side of my bowl and add a teaspoon of vanilla to that. And then 2 eggs, just one at a time. You can see I'm still living dangerously here. Then all at once, I'm going to pour in my dry ingredients to my wet ingredients, and I am going to turn my mixer on. I like to turn it on just pulsing it at first, otherwise those dry ingredients can go all over the place. And then the last thing I'm going to add is 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. Once those are mixed in all together, then you can start scooping them out onto your cookie tray. So I just use a small ice cream scoop for this, and you can see I'm putting them pretty close together. They're not touching, but they are very close together on my tray. These are just gonna freeze. If I were cooking them, obviously I would put them a lot further apart. And then once I fill my tray up, I'm gonna put it in the freezer and leave it just for a few hours until these are completely frozen through. Okay, our chocolate chip cookies are done. I did have a little bit left over, so I went ahead and just made enough for us to have for after lunch today. And then everything else is in my freezer. So once they are completely frozen through, which is only gonna take a couple of hours for the cookies, then I will take those out, put them all in a Ziploc bag, and then you will have individual pre-portioned cookie dough bites we can just take out and stick in the oven just whenever we want to make just a small batch of cookies. So you will want to bake them at 350 for 9 to 10 minutes. I like mine a little on the gooier side, so I go for 9 minutes. If you like yours more like a cake, then you are going to go on the 10-minute side. So that's it, guys. I really love having some sweet treats around our house that I can kind of pull out at a moment's notice if we have company or whatever, and I'm not making a big mess in my kitchen at that time. So I hope that this was encouraging to you guys, and I would highly suggest getting some cookie dough or some cheesecake in your freezer because it can really make any bad day good at the end. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.